Hello and welcome to another episode of the Socially Numb Podcast. I am your host, Richie Leahey. Today I really don't have much to talk about on this week of the podcast. E3 came and went. We went over that last week. Nothing really super exciting. They had the 4K Xbox announcement. Nintendo had some big game announcements. Some of them weren't really even game announcements. Last week I was supposed to recap. I don't even think I did, even though I kept it as the title of the pod. Now, Metroid 4, which was awesome. I liked the trilogy to begin with, but Nintendo didn't really show anything. So we don't know what it looks like or anything. Just a little teaser. And it got some good response. But other than that, in the world of video games, it's just, I haven't played that much over the weekend. So I haven't beat a game this week. I have played Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on my Switch a good bit. That seems to be my go-to game. Have I beaten the game, gotten all the trophies yet? I've done first place, but I haven't unlocked everything yet, so I'm still playing that before I give my final thoughts on it. Some of them have been frustrating. On like the lower CC, there's been a couple where I just get spammed by items, and I know that's part of the game, but sometimes the guys aren't even close, and it seems like the game's doing it to have people just pull up closer to me to make it more competitive. And then at the last second, if someone passes me on the third lap, then it's kind of frustrating. You get spammed with items right before the final race, right before the final call. But like I said, I'll bring that in later. The other thing, I've been working on getting content moved over to the site, my site, the Leahey Report. I'm also using that to kind of point to my portfolio site as I'm cleaning it up. So if you go to RichieLeahey.com, my content's going to be in both places, the Leahey Report and back on that, as I double check it and get it in place. Now, I don't have a timeline on that. It's just as I'm doing it and going back through. I have a couple other videos. So today we'll go ahead and I'll release another one. I think the one that I'm on, so I've talked about these before. What I did was I had videos to help my little brother use them for college recruiting for basketball. And since I really don't have much stuff to talk about, I'm going to go ahead and release another one of these. Now, these used to be on my YouTube, all of them. But what I wanted to do was get into a place where I could go ahead and release them and link to them on a page. I had a page that just had all the videos on it, but no content, which of course, from SEO perspective, that doesn't really work out. If you're into websites, you're into marketing, whatever. They don't really show the actual links on the page. It's hard to get them to show up just because it's a video embed. And then if I don't have content on the YouTube, then they are tags and they don't show up in YouTube search. And then not a lot of people see them. So I took them down. They are private now. Once he ended his recruiting, he got a full scholarship. So that's great. So I just took them down as they were no longer necessary. Since I spent a lot of time on them and I've been going back through my old archive files, it doesn't make sense for me to keep them private. It's not like a family video. So I've been launching a couple of them on the podcast. So up to this point, I believe, if I haven't already, as I'm going back through and listening to these episodes, I've been writing show notes up and then starting to link to them. I don't think any of the Socially Numb ones have gone live on my site yet, though. But I believe I have his junior high ones already live, which includes one of the first ones I did just to test video editing back in the day, because if you remember how computers were, not a lot of computers could handle video editing. So as someone who didn't have the most cutting edge computer, I had to make do with what I had. I had to learn programming on whatever computer I had laying around. Well, I got a media one when I started college to help prepare me for a career in computing, whatever I decided to do. And so I had a media box computer. I used it to record audio, record some demos to get some gigs for my band. The demos didn't turn out too good because I had no formal training and not the best monitoring speakers and stuff that you need. But anyway, the video part, I did get an editor. My mom went and got it because she knew that my brother would need something for recruiting. So the very first video that I tested on was a free throw shooting video, which I think I talked about on here before. So that free throw shooting video was one where it's very simple. He's shooting free throws. The camera angle is pretty even, pretty equal. It's just sitting out there watching. So then I just cut it together with a couple different sessions and cut it with him winning the award for winning the free throw shooting contest. And that was the first video. And then the second video that I launched, I started with, he wanted to play basketball in college, and I had footage of him playing football in junior high. Now, football is a little bit easier to cut together because the play completely stops. So that was my second video that I did. I got a video of him playing football, just some of his highlights, and that video turned out pretty good. So that one is launched as well. And some of these I've been changing. So when I originally did these and posted them, YouTube didn't have such an in-depth copyright system. And so I went ahead and had to change the video the second time I posted these. Or the music, the audio for the video. So that was one I posted. I'm pretty sure I talked about these before, but just in case I didn't, I'm going to go back through and then I'll post them on this week's episode if I haven't posted them elsewhere. If I have posted them before, you can look through, just do a search. I'll make it like junior high, whatever, basketball and football. Because then the third one I did was junior high basketball. Now he did junior high basketball and he played a good bit. And the video for this one was, junior high basketball is a little bit slower than normal basketball. Even high school basketball is slower than college, and then the NBA is a lot faster. So it's not as hard to make cuts, but as you're just learning, I think the video turned out pretty well. Some of them highlights I let linger a bit too far. Some of them I cut too quick. Like as soon as the ball goes in the hoop, you can see it cut. But you live and learn. I didn't have any transition. I may have transition effects. I actually don't remember. I think I tried to keep it as close to what ESPN would do as possible, or one of the other major sports networks when I built the video. And so the next one, and what the rest of these will be, is him playing throughout high school. So the very next one that I did was his sophomore highlights. And I had to kind of go through and see where I'm at as I look at these videos. But his sophomore highlights, where he started as a freshman a good bit, but I had lived away from him, so I couldn't make it to his games. My mom didn't have a camera. And when she did have a camera, these aren't high definition videos because they didn't have that technology. It wasn't like she had a big sporting camera that she could follow him around and do high def videos at that time, because this is a few years ago, before they were common, before your phone shot high def. This is back in the square box days. At least his junior high ones were, and I think the sophomore ones. Eventually what I did was I did buy a small handheld high definition camcorder for my mom to use. That way I could have a little bit better videos for him to promote himself with. I want to say they're maybe 720p. I don't even think, maybe we did record at 1080p in hopes of skimming down, but I don't even know if I did in the final cut. I don't remember. In hindsight, I would have just did him with a very high frame rate at 720p. But again, you don't have computers that went ahead and gave you that extra oomph, that extra push to kind of look at them and put them out there. Now, what I might do this week, and this depends on the podcast, what I might do is I might throw together links to this stuff and actually start posting the more in-depth show notes now for the current episodes each week. So I'll post like the more in-depth show notes this week and go ahead and fill in the last ones later. Now the downside with that is whenever I do that, they're going to kind of be out of order if I put them on like Apple News. So it will be like Socially Numb 40, or what are we on, 41 this week maybe. And then it'll kind of jump back to like Socially Numb episode 1 as I repost them. That's why I've been putting them off. But just to help me so I don't get further and further behind, that might be what I start doing. So I might show this video today, make it live, because I'm recording this in the morning before this goes live. So I might do that. That will help me be consistent and see what I have so that I know where I'm starting. And I don't think I've talked about it before. I had a list of which ones are public and which ones are private. I'm trying to move, like I said, I'm trying to move the private ones, him playing basketball and some other ones that aren't really family vids, into the public space on YouTube, and then I'll share them here so people can kind of see. So if you want to see, these aren't like the best videos, but it's kind of my first start just to give me a little bit more. And like I said, I've had them on before. People have watched. I want to say I might have like 10 to 13 videos. Some of them I'm going to put on there. I didn't actually shoot myself. My uncle made them. But just for archival sakes, I think I'm going to put them back out there. I don't know. I think I had to do them in 2 cuts because he made a longer video. I have to kind of see where I am. I might have tied them back together. I might have made the highlights out. I don't remember what I did exactly. But as I'm going back through, this week will be the sophomore highlights. So his sophomore highlights, again, are just going to highlight his sophomore year of him playing. So as you go through these, you'll see how he gets bigger and bigger if you're watching these as I do the podcast episode. So those will be out there. And that's the one I'm pretty much going to launch this week. Now, I did have some other projects, but again, I have to kind of go back through and listen to these podcasts to see which ones I talked about and fix the show notes. Because without the show notes, I don't know which ones I posted, and I don't want to be double posting extra content, as I think that's annoying. So I'm hoping that this isn't the case with this basketball one. I'm pretty sure the sophomore one didn't launch. And then from here on out, I'm going to go ahead and do probably one a week, launch a video with the podcast just to put it out there, and then we can go from there. I haven't streamed live video game playing for a while either, as I've been working on cleaning up the site. The site's a lot closer to being done than it was even a few months ago or a few weeks ago. I have a lot of the stuff moved over and a lot of the content ready to go in place. I have some other images that I've been trying to get out, basically kind of like my portfolio stuff, which if you're interested, you can go to LinkedIn. Basically, the RichieLeahey.com used to be my resume site, and it worked well for what it was. It was a resume site ahead of its time. No one had resume sites. I thought it was another cool way that I could just show, like, hey, I do know how to do web programming, and it got me some gigs. So it worked out for what it was worth. Now that I have a lot more experience and full-time gigs, because right out of college you don't have that, so I had a website to kind of show that I knew what I was doing on the tech side of things. Had a couple of my projects on GitHub and stuff for people to download, and some of those are on there too. Now, a lot of those are older content that I'm moving over, so I'm not really going to talk about these old projects on the pod. Are they the greatest computer programs known to mankind? Nah. But because I wrote them, yeah, we can pretend that they are. I don't know which ones I have even on there. I had some more recent ones that I've kind of taken down just because you give them to a client, you don't want to have to deal with them saying the non-disclosure agreement or whatever. So I really don't have a lot of like in-depth programs and stuff that I've built, websites. But I've been going back through, trying to look through that stuff too, because there might be a couple things that I can pull out and kind of show and be like, hey, look at this, yeah, this is cool. This is something that I built, but not too much into that side of things yet that I've seen. So those will be coming up next sooner. I'm not sure. This might be a pretty short podcast this week as I'm getting things all together. The next week's might be longer to make up for it if I have a couple extra games beat. But right now, I'm not too sure how long this episode's going to go. I have some of the extra ones anyway. Some of the ones I did back before are a little bit longer. But as I'm moving out to the show notes, I mean, just having the podcast wrap up a little bit shorter so that I can roll some of these out isn't the worst idea, but I can get back into the video editing side of things coming up later as I do the video game stuff. I think that's a side of tech that's kind of forgotten. I also have to change the podcast feed. I had this listed under tech news, but I really don't do news. So basically, when I set this up, I thought iTunes picked 3 categories. And at that time, if you remember back to the first episode, I was trying to do like trending news and stuff. But that gets hard as I'm trying to get people to listen. They're like, oh, well, let me listen to the first episode. And then it's old news. So unless I have big following off the bat, it's hard to jump in and do a news podcast. Maybe in the future, if I go ahead and change once I get a bunch of listeners, if I start to inject a little bit of news, but I really don't foresee that happening, because the only one that I really do with that is sports news, and that's on the Southbound Sports Show. So that's where, if you want news, listen to that podcast. This one, a little bit more tech focused, like I said, but it's becoming pretty much video game focused. And as I'm trying to get into streaming video games, I'm not sure what's going to become of this show, what the direction's going to be, or anything like that as I'm moving forward into the future of this show. So I've been putting up the audio only versions of this podcast on YouTube as well. Like I said, I did have some other videos that I wanted to mix in to just kind of get my channel in a spot where I have all of my content on it. Because if you remember when this started, I had a separate YouTube channel for Socially Numb, and I wanted to bring everything together because it's hard to market 2 or 3 different channels when I could just put everything under my own name. And that's eventually what I did, because I had the Dad Strength show too. So that one I've been producing content for, and that's on my personal YouTube as well. And so I've been dumping old episodes of that as I've been moving the feed for that into more of an archival format, because I don't know if that show's going to continue. It might have run its course. Not 100% sure. I still have some episodes I've been putting out, but at this point, once it wraps up, my daughter's getting pretty big, so I don't have a lot of dad topics to talk about. I'm more into the video game stuff and the tech stuff. Now, I could talk tech each week, but even with that, then I have to get into more tech topics when I'm just looking at the video game side of things mostly. And with that, it seems to be a lot of fun, but at some point, it would be easier for me just to go ahead and stream video games and talk about it so you guys can see in first place. So like I said, that might be part of the podcast where I just kind of switch and talk about video games over them, and the podcast becomes that. It's leaning like that might be the case, but I'm not 100% sure. But we're going to keep the format for now as it is. I tried to do a tech topic followed by a video game that I beat, but I haven't really beat one. So we'll end the podcast this week talking a little bit about Pokemon Go. So Pokemon Go had a big update where you had to have, like, all the gyms went down. And when they had, back in March, they had an evolution update. I don't think I ever even talked about this on the show. When the first couple episodes, I talked about Pokemon Go pretty good. Well, they did an update to include the Generation 2 Pokemon. So when the game first launched, it was the one from the very first Pokemon game, Pokemon Red and Blue. And then Yellow. They had like the original 151 Pokemon on the handheld game. Now, some of them aren't in the game. They're legendary Pokemon. And they've been teasing that they're going to be put into the game. Well, back in March, instead of putting these legendary guys into the game, they went ahead and released Generation 2 Pokemon, which I believe are from Gold and Silver. So they went ahead and launched those. They released those Pokemon into the wild, which, again, brought back my interest in the game. And it's been fun, pretty fun for it. There are also people that put out map scanners and stuff, so you can kind of see nests. Some of them aren't like the very high depth versions of like what the map will be. It's just people reporting what they caught where. So it's like, hey, I was at this park and there seemed to be a lot of whatever, Growlites. So then you go on the map and then you can kind of check in. Kind of like Foursquare, that app that was the rage a few years ago, where you could show everyone where you've been and where you've been hanging out. And I tested that out for like 2 weeks, and I thought, well, this isn't really safe telling people where you are, that you're not home, especially if you have an apartment by yourself. So that's where the Pokemon thing is a better version of that, because you don't have to worry about people going through and finding out when you were there or where you were there. But it does help out, and it's kind of like a community-based thing. Like, hey, here we go. I saw this Pokemon here. Someone else sees another one there. And then it kind of gives you an aim, so you're not just... The developers, I guess, wanted you to kind of just walk around aimlessly looking for Pokemon. But once you have most of them, because once you play the game for like a few weeks or so, actually probably a month or so, depending on... Because some of them only come from eggs. So we'll say you play the game for 3 months. You could probably have 90% of the Pokemon. And then from there, you have actually probably 80%, 70, 80, something like that. But you get the point. So you play the game for a little bit. You have a bulk of the Pokemon in your Pokedex. And there's a couple rare ones that you haven't seen. So this is handy, going to the maps. Now, I'm at the point where I've been playing pretty much for a year. I have 200-something Pokemon. I have most of the Generation 1. Actually, I think I have all the Generation 1 except for the regionals and except for the legendaries. Generation 2, I think I'm 5 away or so. So I think, I have about maybe 5 or so Pokemon left in the Generation 2. And that doesn't count the regional Pokemon or the other ones that I can't get right now, like the legendary ones or whatever. So when you're playing the game, I mean, it's not that hard to get that many. The worst part is walking and hatching the eggs. I think a couple, 1, 2, 3 of them I have the younger forms I have to hatch. The other 2 that I'm missing, or the 3 that I have that I can evolve. So I already have the younger forms. I just have to walk, So if I walk with a buddy, even if I don't catch any, I can eventually level up my guy. Which gives me a reason, like if I wanted to work out or do like a pedometer type thing, I could use a game as a pedometer, so that to motivate me to like walk or do some exercise. If you're into that, if you're like that type of gamer, you want to get outside, get some fresh air, it would encourage you to do that, because there's really no other way around it for a couple of them. Now, if you walk them on events, some of the events lower the distance that you need to walk. So instead of like the ones that I have left are all 5-kilometer walks, you walk 5 kilometers, you get 1 candy. And then after whatever, like if I have 100 candies to go, that's a lot of walking that I have to do to evolve it. And that's when these are the rarer Pokemon. Well, here I have a couple that I'm walking. The other 2 that I'm missing are both babies. And the babies in the game you get by walking and hatching. So I can go ahead and walk, hatch an egg, and there I get the one. So that's about the ones I'm missing, I think. There might have been 1 or 2 other ones that would be similar. One of them I get from walking after hatching, I think, if I'm missing that Hitman Top guy and the Tyrogue. If you know the Pokemon, I guess I can just say the names. So I'm missing those ones, and I'm missing a couple of the other babies. So maybe I have more like 7 to go. And once I walk, so like I can walk, and I figured the point is I can use it as like a pedometer, like I said. So if I walk the game, eventually I'm going to have enough that's it. I walk enough steps that I evolve the ones that I get from the candies. Now, if I never get the babies in that time frame, to me, there's no point to keep playing the game unless they have a baby event, because there's no point in walking just to catch them all. And again, I mentioned this before, I'm only playing to catch them all. The new gym thing I haven't tested out, but apparently they have raids now where every so often there will be a monster Pokemon that shows up, it encourages you to go ahead and have someone go with you to fight this gym battle. And for me, I have a family or whatever, so like if we don't go out together, it's hard for me just to get a couple of buddies together to run out and say, hey, you want to go fight some Pokemon? Like, so at most, my family and stuff, we're going to go out. If we all go out together, that's a couple people. So it's encouraging people to go out and meet others. But from a family perspective, that's not very, like, it doesn't make me want to play the game at certain points. Where if a legendary Pokemon's coming up at like 1 in the morning, I can't wake my kid up and go, hey, we're going to go catch a Pokemon. That doesn't go ahead and add anything to me wanting to play. Now, if there are certain points, like right now, I signed into the game this morning when I woke up and I looked, and there was a raid about to go off. Well, people who have work or school, you're not going to be able to drop what you're doing to go raid. I watched to see if they hatched, and they did hatch right before I left. There were 2 that I passed. One was an Alakazam, and one was a Magmar. So those are the 2 that you could go fight. Now, what happens when you fight? I don't know. I haven't done it yet. So maybe for experimental sake, I'll go ahead and I'll jump out and test one of these out. And if I test it out and it's fun, then I'll keep doing it. But other than that, I'm not going to rush out to play this aspect of the game. I don't think is going to draw me in. Legendaries, I know they said something about tickets where you can do 1 raid a day maybe, and then it gives you the extra things, but the extra items like rare candies or whatever that levels me or my Pokemon up that I want, like, do I need those rare candy items? No. If they're not going to help me in the gym battle, then do I really need them? No, I don't think so. And I'm not really sure if you can keep regular gym, so I don't know if the raids happen randomly or if it's tied into who has control over the gym itself. I don't know, because it's a relatively new system. So if it is possible that there could be some underlying eggs or like presents and stuff that would get me wanting to play. Like if there's an underlying feature that's going to be thrown out there that interests me, yeah, I could see wanting to play that. But overall, is it going to draw me in? I don't know at this point. Once I catch once you catch a legendary Pokemon, that's it. Like, you caught them all. So if the raids happen where a legendary shows up every couple days to draw people in, or maybe there's another thing, I don't know if that's, like, it depends on how hard it is to catch as well. Where if I go ahead and I fight a battle and he breaks out instantly out of the Pokeball, is that going to draw me in? Maybe, is there a Master Ball? Maybe fighting these legendary or the raids before the legendaries come get you a chance at a Master Ball. Then yeah, maybe that would draw me in to help catch the other Pokemon, jeez. And that can go ahead and give me incentive to play the game. Because then you have some of the other ones that showed up. So one of the ones that I have to walk to get is the egg guy, Togepi or whatever his name is. His evolved form. So if I go ahead and get him, I saw him in the wild one time. And what I did was he broke away. The battle was like, I'm fighting him knowing he's a rarer Pokemon. And I'm actually not too worried about catching him or walking him at this point because I know he evolves again. So what I'm looking at is he evolves again. So that means that when that generation of Pokemon get added into the game, then maybe, yeah, he will be thrown out and he will get to play. Again, I think it's going to be a lower ball, so it's going to be easier to catch him. I mean, so I'll get to play more to try to get him again. I'm not really worried about evolving him this generation. And that's if they keep adding on to the game with these extra generations. Are they going to do that? I don't know. So would I hope that they do that? Yes, I do hope that they do that. And so that's what I'm hoping from the perspective of me playing the game is I want there to be some type of deal that can get me interested into the game as a whole and draw me in for the long term. I want to be able to play the game from the aspect of playing the game and having fun. And I know I'm talking probably a whole bunch of nonsense here, but that's the facts that I'm facing when I'm looking at this game, and even gaming in general as I'm going through and putting stuff together. I'm finding myself disheartened by like the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation Plus and the free games we get, and playing all these games that I can get on Steam for $1, where if I'm paying $60 a year for PlayStation or $50 a year, and I can get the same games that they're giving out for free on Steam for $1, and I get maybe 2 games that I want to play a month, that's going to cost me, what, 20 games, 30, 40 games, that's $40. Let's say it's $10 just getting them on Steam. What's the point of playing PlayStation Online? It's not that I don't enjoy playing online. I do enjoy playing online. But from a cost-benefit perspective, I can play the same games that I'm getting on PlayStation 4. I can play them on Steam online for, I think, free for most of them. Some of the MMORPG games or whatever, yeah, those ones might need extra payment to play. But from my perspective, the ones that I've been playing now, they are pretty much free to play. So I don't have to worry too much about that. So if I can play the games I normally play for free online using either the Nintendo Switch or Steam, because I know some of the games probably aren't going to come to the Switch, but those same ones I get are probably going to come to the PC on Steam or whatever. The exclusive games that I play on PlayStation, God of War and Uncharted and stuff, those have been drifting away where they're very rare. It's very rare for a game to come out that's exclusive. And the Uncharted 4 is a lot of movies. So it's a lot of less game time unless I'm playing online, which then again goes back to my paying for online or whatever. And if I go ahead and get a game that's similar on Steam and I can play online that way, then I really don't have to worry about that extra stuff. I don't need to play it. I can play for free, and I can get rid of the PlayStation Plus. But whatever, I'll see how gaming's going. I really hope it's not going to VR. Maybe I'll bring that in next week. I saw a lot of that at E3, and that doesn't even interest me at all. I've played it. I've played on the default Oculus Rift, the original one, I mean. And I've even done some development for some VR games. But once the novelty wears off, that's it. The novelty wears off, and then you are left with a game that's very thin or shallow. And maybe that's not true. Maybe you'll play a big game, but like I'm not interested in a game like Fallout or whatever. Maybe after time, like I don't think I could play that in VR. Maybe over time it will get better and better, and it's something in the future where you'll be sitting there and actually playing the game. But at this point, I don't see it, and so that might shift the coverage of the podcast a bit. It's going to keep going. For what format and stuff, I don't know. But it's evolved a long way since I started it, and I like doing it, and recording on the go is easy. Gives me something to do, post each week. Maybe I'll start to do some more rapid fire ones as I throw up stuff and try to get more live streaming games. But what I'm going to try to do is stream some of the free PlayStation Plus games I have stacked up on. And as I beat them and I look and see what other games are coming out each month on PlayStation, I'm going to kind of see if it's worth it or not. But that's it for this week. Again, not really any topic, just kind of rambling a little bit, still in the same video game topics. So I'll probably change the podcast topic on iTunes. Like I said, I started earlier. I don't think I even cleared it up. But when I launched the podcast, I was under the assumption that iTunes would list your podcast in 3 categories. Apparently it does it on the hidden side, which you can do it, but it doesn't actually show when you click on it. So right now, I think it's showing this podcast as tech news when it has gone more towards video games. And I know people want the newer, up-to-date video game stuff that's cutting edge and is talking about over the top, the newest, latest, greatest things, which I could see if I'm going to stick with the Switch and get rid of PlayStation Plus. I could see it being geared mostly towards a Nintendo-only podcast and switch to video games only. But I don't know. We're going to kind of see. That's what I grew up with. I'm loving the Switch. Played Mario Kart, like I said. Hopefully I'll be bringing that in a couple weeks or so. Once I beat the game, I want to beat it thoroughly. So it's not going to be a week-long game. It's going to be something a little bit more intense to get rolling. But that's it for this week. Thank you for listening. And come back next week. Check us out. Follow me, Richie Leahey, on YouTube and on Twitch to get me streaming some of these games I've been talking about. And if you have any questions, comments, reach out to me on Twitter. Follow me, send me a line. And I'll be back next week. Thanks.